All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a discussion of The Fury of the Gods by the author John Gwynne. This is the third book in the Bloodsworn Saga. And we are here today to have beginning with a non-spoiler discussion about John Gwynne's books and focusing especially though about our feelings about Bloodsworn as a whole, but Fury then, and then we're going to go into spoilers, full spoilers. But if you haven't read anything by John Gwynne, you're welcome to hang out here for a while because we're going to be doing non-spoiler for a good chunk of time here. And then we'll give you a warning when we move on to spoilers. But let me introduce my guests here. Right next to me here is Sam from the channel Sam Not So Wise. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Jo, góðan daginn, ég heiti Sam. Mig langar að þakka ykkur kærlega fyrir að bjóða mér að tala við svona glæsilegt og vinjanlegt og gott fólk. Takk sérstaklega Philip fyrir þetta tækifæri og ég er svo spenntur að tala svona spennandi og dásamlega bók.
Excellent. All right.
I agree. Whatever you said, I agree.
And as you can see, Sam is originally from the UK, but he speaks Icelandic and resides in Iceland, and which is honestly the most beautiful country in the world. If you love just dramatic, incredible, otherworldly landscapes, I had the privilege of meeting Sam over in Iceland and getting introduced to some of the beauties of that country. So, Sam, it is really great to have you here.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Would you like me to translate, or are you just gonna?
Oh, I think we could probably do with a translation.
I said, I'm gonna burn you all and rip the flesh from your bones, just like that. No, I obviously just said, hello, my name is Sam. I just want to say a massive thank you for inviting me to chat with such amazing folk, especially Philip, obviously. And I'm just really excited to talk about this brilliant book. That's basically all I said.
All right. Well,
And the privilege was mine meeting you, Philip, obviously.
oh, yeah. That's the wonderful thing about BookTube is we meet people who are just as crazy as we are about great stories. So I love it. Okay, so below Sam is Will, who is one half of the brothers Gwynne. And Will, would you like to say anything about yourself or the channel, or also your other channel? Will has his own channel as well on BookTube.
I don't think we mentioned that actually. I don't think we talked about that.
Well, I'm sorry, I can't really offer something like Icelandic to make it very interesting. But me and Papa Gwyn, we've known each other a little while, so hopefully I'll have a few insights on this chat. And yeah, I am jealous that the other half of the Brothers Gwyn, Ed, gets to sit next to Papa Gwyn today. But I'll have to hide my jealousy and just ask for some recompense on some of the characters in Fury of the Gods. But I think we'll get to that a bit later in the spoiler section.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that very much. And last but not least, we have here not only the other half of the Brothers Gwyn, but the author himself. I always think of you as Papa Gwyn. I'm sorry to say that. But your proper name, of course, is John Gwynne. Thank you both. It's so lovely to see you.
Well, do you know, it's funny that we started calling Papa Gwyn on YouTube because I saw Janny Wirtz actually tweeted not long ago saying Papa Gwyn, and it was just incredible that Janny Wirtz has called you Papa Gwyn. So it's infamous now, I think, the name. I'm sorry.
No, it is. It's I've done I did a small book tour for the release of Fury, and the amount of people that came up and introduced themselves to me and said, "Hi, Papa Gwyn." Nice to meet you.
Mama Gwyn is very worried.
Oh dear. Well, I think it's a wonderful name to have, and very appropriate because one of the things we're going to talk about, obviously, in this particular wonderful book, but we'll save it for the spoilers, is and I mentioned it in my non-spoiler review, is just how beautifully you do delve into parent-child relationships and familial relationships in general. So I think it's very appropriate that you are Papa Gwyn. But yeah, let's get into it. I'd like to begin by allowing everybody to, if it's okay with you, John, to ask a question, whatever random, any question they want. And of course, you do have your authorial privilege to refuse to answer. But let's just start with the thing that you've been dying to ask John Gwynne. Okay, this is your opportunity, guys. Okay, so Sam, how about we start with you? And what is your completely random question for John Gwynne?
I'll do this in English to be kind,
Okay.
not to be like just talking about the same thing all the time. But I want to ask about the Icelandic because me understanding when the Icelandic comes up is it's amazing for me to like read that and kind of know what's going on.
Sure.
Whereas other people will read it and be like, this is gobbledygook. At least I get to understand it. But the Icelandic is really good. So I want to kind of know how you got this Icelandic into your books. Like, what did you talk to somebody or was it Google Translate?
So obviously the idea of using Icelandic was it's out of the Scandinavian languages, I believe it's the closest to Old Norse. So that's why I wanted to use that, because I wanted to evoke that whole sense of the the Old Norse world. And I mean, to be honest, it was a mixture. So I'd start off with Google Translate as kind of the broad while I was writing, and I have a couple of people who were readers who very kindly offered to just check over the Icelandic for me as I went. So I'd let them have a quick look over it and check that it wasn't back to front or
Yeah.
hugely
Were they Icelandic themselves?
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense then.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a good time to talk about a very interesting fact.
Yeah.
So today, the day of recording, is actually National Icelandic Day, the day where they celebrate their own language today. So that's a complete circumstance. But even further is today, Iceland have gotten back their old manuscripts from Denmark, at least a portion of them, and they're putting them on show for the first time ever in Iceland.
Wow.
So these are manuscripts that are that the old sagas are based on.
Wow.
They're like from the 13th and 14th century, and today is the day. I was just like,
wow.
what an amazing coincidence that today is that day.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So another reason to visit Iceland.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The list is getting longer.
The pilgrimage to visit the sagas. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, Will, have you thought of a question that you absolutely have been dying to ask your father all these years?
Oh, well,
hopefully writing related.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had a chance to ask you actually. I mean, I could ask who your favorite son is, but I might already know the answer.
How do you block people?
How can you be such a wonderful father and wonderful person with a wonderful smile, but be so nasty to all of your characters? I just still don't get it. It's quite scary when I look at you sometimes. Like rereading The Bloodsworn recently is quite scary. I look at him, he looks lovely, and then I think of just the things that happen in his books, and I just can't split it.
I think schizophrenia is probably the answer. No.
You're a bit of the Logan Linefingers. You have multiple personalities.
Yes,
clearly.
Perhaps that's what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd imagine in the shield wall that I wouldn't want to be on the opposite side of you, John. I'm thinking that could be a very terrifying experience.
Oh, it genuinely is terrifying. I think actually all of us, you have injured many times, like minor injuries, but there has been blood drawn by accident. But he just gets a frenzy. He is a berserker.
I was
The
gonna
eyes,
say,
it's all in the eyes. They get so big, and the Dane axe is swinging, and terror is in the air.
I think we need to stop this now.
So, Ed, do you have a question that you would like to pose to your father?
Papa Gwyn, so in the books you are going to write in the future, is cheese going to feature so heavily as it has done in the Bloodsworn? Because I feel like readers have been missing out. Like fantasy food sometimes makes me hungry. So, especially in the Bloodsworn, I always feel hungry. Like the pottage stew, the cheese, all of that. Sometimes you read other stuff and you're not hungry, but I feel like cheese should have a part to play.
Okay, well, I mean that's.
And also, what's your favorite cheese?
I'm not sure if that is a good question or not.
I think
but
it is.
I do have themes in my books, and I mean, usually they're things like family, friendship, love, loss, betrayal, revenge. I could add cheese to that list. It will go down as something that pops up.
That would mean a lot to me. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll see what I can do.
And what's your favorite cheese at the moment?
Oh, I mean, I don't have a favorite cheese. I like lots of cheeses, as you do too. I like a good strong cheddar.
Yeah.
But also like something like a creamy, Stiltony type cheese. So yeah, it's a mood thing, isn't it?
Oh, of course.
So maybe in like 25 years, when people mention, "Oh, John Gwynne, the author of cheese in all his books," maybe that's what they'll think of first.
There is a risk of getting labeled the cheesiest author in fantasy.
This could be a pivotal moment for me.
Ed, this is your chance to shine. You love your puns. Come on.
that was really good.
No, Philip's too quick for me.
Ed, just don't be cheesy.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Well, I do want to follow that up with my own question, and it is actually related very much because you have this character in the Bloodsworn Saga by the name of Svik, who I think it's pretty well known that Svik is a pretty close biographical representation of your beloved middle son, Ed, who is here with us. And I'm wondering how much of Svik really is Ed, because I know the cheese is the big thing, right? Ed is a big fan of cheese. We all know this. And I did make note of that in the copies of the Adan trilogy that I sent to Ed as well. I made reference to the cheese. I was sure to do that in each one. But I also think that a sense of humor perhaps might be something shared between them. It seems to me that Svik is, by the way, I love this character so much. His humor is, I would suggest, essential to the story. You give us these wonderful lighthearted moments, which somehow they help us to get through the tough stuff. And so I really appreciate Svik in the story as well, because a lot of the humor is coming from him. So he plays a really crucial role here. And I also noticed, so I'm guessing that's also an Ed thing, is the sense of humor, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. And the last thing about Svik that really stands out to me is he's very concerned about his hair. I wondered also, is this something that is drawn from real life? So would you please comment on Svik and Ed?
Philip, you've actually you've seen to the heart of who Edward is.
Those three things.
Cheese, humor, hair.
No, you're right. The sense of humor was the main draw for that I took from Ed for Svik. There's quite a few witticisms that I added with Svik that are running jokes that Edward will always say around the family. So yeah, the sense of humor was kind of the core of the inspiration from Ed for Svik. Also, his slightly vain.
Wow!
With his appearance and his hair and beard, and I mean, you take pride in your looks.
You're well groomed.
Does he?
No, I've never noticed it. No, I in my younger years, definitely. I think since having a child, I haven't got time for that anymore.
Yeah, you're more exhausted now.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the bags under my eyes. But no, okay, you have me there.
I do have a question about Svik for spoilers, by the way. Don't let me forget.
Oh, good. Yeah, we have plenty to say.
We can remind you. And I will be the first to admit Ed is the funny one, and he does make me laugh sometimes when I'm not as annoyed of him. He does make me laugh, and sometimes when I am as well, which is more frustrating when I want to say
I'll pay you later.
And he makes me laugh. So,
and Ed's a great storyteller as well.
I've sent my bank details over.
Yes, and I should note as well that there is a character within the body of your work, John, that is based on Will as well. One of my favorite characters of yours is Drem from Of Blood and Bone. So more for other readers if you haven't read The Faithful and the Fallen and Of Blood and Bone. plenty of other great characters that you can find as well. But speaking of your other work, I'd like everybody now to transition to, we're still going to stay non-spoiler for this, but um, let's talk about, and this will be interesting, of course, from Will and Ed's perspective, especially as they've grown up with your stories. And they've talked about it a fair amount on their channel as well, but I'd love for my viewers to be able to hear that as well. But we're going to begin with Sam. And Sam, if you would just talk about your relationship to John Gwynne's work as a whole, and what it is you love about his writing, and then transition to your assessment of the Bloodsworn trilogy and where you feel that fits within the rest of his work, and then specifically your non-spoiler thoughts on Fury, on the Fury of the Gods. So if you wouldn't mind doing all three of those things, but beginning with the big picture and then narrowing down to Fury.
Yeah, well, it's thanks to BookTube that I found John Gwynne, mainly Mike. He championed Faithful and the Fallen a lot, obviously. So I read that and it just, shot itself right into top 10 series of all time. It was, I absolutely loved it. It's my kind of thing. Like I talk about this quite often about, so I'm a musician and I love music that takes something that and does something new and different with it. So I found it to be that like classic fantasy style, but in a modern sense, and I just really loved it. And books, I remember books mostly when they make me feel things, and you can really just feel the heart bleeding out of the books, and that's what made me remember it the most, is the heart. Now I'm going to have to admit something extremely shameful, that I haven't read the trilogy afterwards. So cancel me. That's the end. That's the end of my BookTube career. Goodbye, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
It's nice knowing you.
But it's just that, it's that classic thing of the TBR being too large, and I wanted to read them, obviously, and now it's just been too long, and I feel like I need to read them again. The original 4 books. Yeah, the original 4 books. It will happen. I promise. I promise.
It's fine. There's just too many books out there, aren't there?
Exactly.
Although I think that's quite a good excuse as well, so you can jump back into the Faithful and the Fallen.
True.
It's not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing to have to reread one of my favorite series of all time. So it's
Although
a blessing,
I would also,
really.
my take on that is you don't really have to reread The Faithful and the Fallen, because Blood and Bone takes place about 100 years later, and it's a different story. Same world, but different story. But totally reread it if you want first. But I would say,
we'll see.
To someone in your position, you could just go into it, and it's its own satisfying story. But yeah.
There we go. Maybe that's useful for me being that way, so you can tell everybody else that hasn't read it that you don't need to reread. Yeah. And then, so obviously, as soon as Bloodsworn came out, I was immediately interested. And, I'm generally not a big fan of Viking-y stuff in general, which is
ironic because you live in Iceland.
I know. But it was an easy sell because I loved the Faithful and the Fallen, and I just found that it didn't matter at all that I don't care about Viking stuff, because the same feelings I got were apparent in this series as well. The heart, but a lot more gritty, and I've absolutely loved the whole trilogy. It's been brilliant. Blood pumping ride. I would almost call it like a grim, dark world if it didn't have all of the hope and the love in it, because it's so gritty and horrible and everyone's dying on every other page. So it's very different, but I've really, really enjoyed it. And I think Fury is just the perfect ending to it, where all of the themes that you've been working with throughout the story, about othering and slavery and that kind of stuff, really come to a head and are dealt with beautifully, and it just increases in epicness. And yeah, it was just a perfect ending, and I really enjoyed it.
Yay. All right.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I should point out that modern people in Iceland are not Vikings, everyone.
I mean,
not all of them.
They're kind of tall and hairy, so they're quite Viking-y.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's where the
Actually,
similarities end.
yeah, like my brother-in-law is I'm a short guy, and he's 6'4" and he's extremely hairy. He's got this big beer belly. He's quite frightening if you don't know him.
I hope he has a beard too.
Oh, he's got a humongous beard.
All
Okay.
right. Good, good. So we've temporarily lost Will there. I think his internet connection is a little
Have we
unstable.
upset him?
I think he's recording on his other channel. I do. He does that a lot.
Oh, you got to dig it.
I'll say it now while he's not here.
That's funny. So Ed, that means you're up next. If you don't mind, give us. This is a very special relationship, obviously, that you have with your father's storytelling. But I'll let you talk about it.
So I remember coming home after watching The Two Towers in the cinema, and that Papa Gwyn would always tell us stories, and he would even embellish stories that were already written. So I remember that he was telling us the story of The Hobbit, and it had the scene where you've got the trolls and Bilbo, and there was a lot more dialogue in your version. And I remember just thinking, this is brilliant. And then I read The Hobbit and I thought, this is great. But there were so many great moments that you'd made up. You just said happened. And then I was 6 and I knew Papa Gwyn, he had a gift. And I remember coming home after The Two Towers and you were talking to Mama Gwyn. And we kind of begged you to write your own story. And ever since then, reading So Deep a Malice, which was the first draft of Malice all those years ago, up until Fury, all of these characters in Papa Gwyn's works feel like they've become friends. They feel like they're, we talk about them at the dinner table as much as we talk about anything, really, as much as I would talk about cheese. Always felt like Corban was one of my best friends, and then Will, became a nice guy, so he took over. But now I've always had a really special relationship with all of Papa Gwyn's books because of so many different reasons. But I think just the way I'm brought up and the morals, the values that we have, the things that we have important to us, we have the same as Papa Gwyn, because obviously you've raised us. If we didn't, you'd probably kick us out of the house if we didn't share your beliefs. But no, I think all those things you get in your writing, they come through, and that's who you are as a person. And obviously we love you, we love your writing. So yeah, and it's wonderful it's come full circle round to Fury, because it's a triumph of an ending of the Bloodsworn.
It is indeed. Well said. John, would you like to talk about your evolution as a writer? What initially why did you get into it, and how do you talk about your relationship to these stories, these beautiful stories that you've gifted us with over these years?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Philip. So yeah, I came to writing quite late. I was in my 30s when I started writing Malice. And before that, I was always a voracious reader. It's my favorite thing to do, but I never once considered myself kind of writerly material. I wasn't one of these people who was just, writing all the time. And I just appreciated books and loved them, but never thought, I didn't have the self-belief to have a go.
Yeah.
And so I was a teacher at a local university at the time. This is it's around the time Ed's talking about, 2002, and I'd stopped teaching a couple of years before, well, maybe a year and a half, 2 years before that, because my daughter Harriet, she was profoundly disabled and she was going through a particularly kind of unwell patch. So I took some time out to help my wife Caroline, who and she ran like an antique vintage furniture business from home so that she could look after Harry. And I took some time out to help more with that. And 6 months turned into a year, turned into 18 months. And I kind of realized that I wasn't going to be going back to uni. I needed to be at home, which was fine. And so I helped out Caroline with her business. But I'm not very practical, and by helping out, what I ended up doing was carrying furniture, deliveries, painting, sanding, stuff that I'm not really, doesn't come naturally to me at all.
Uh-huh.
I thought I need a hobby at home that kind of keeps my kind of academic side of my brain engaged. So we'd been out to see The Two Towers at the cinema, came home, we're having a meal around the table, and I mentioned it to to Caroline a little before then. I just said again, I need to come up with a hobby that I can do at home. And Caroline said, why don't you try writing a book? I said, don't be ridiculous. I couldn't write a book. I wouldn't know where to start. And then Will had only just been born then, but so Ed and Ed's elder brother James, they were both like, oh, go on, Dad, please try and write a book. So I thought, do you know what, that might actually be fun. I'll have a go. So we chatted about, the kind of book I'd like to write, and brainstormed a few ideas. And that's where the Banished Lands and Malice, or So Deep a Malice as it started off, began. That was like the spark for it. That when I sat down to have a go at writing, probably the next day, I just sat down with this blank page and thought, I don't know how to write a book. What do I do? So I thought, well, the only way I know how to write is how I learned at university. And I had a great lecturer, and his mantra was always, to pass your degree, you need to read, and then you need to read, and then you need to read some more. So he was talking about the research. So I thought, well, I'll just take that principle and I'll apply that to writing this novel, or a series of novels, because right away I thought I want to write a big, whopping, epic fantasy, being totally crazy. And so I threw myself into research, and I thought, well, I don't have many rules for writing, because I think, there's no right or wrong way to write. It's just you find your own way. But what I said to myself was, you need to write what you want to read. So I need to be passionate about what I'm writing, and the things that I was passionate about, and still am, was fantasy, was ancient history, and kind of world mythologies. I just grew up from a very early age just being in love with all of those things.
All good things. Yeah.
So that's what I threw myself into, researching all of that stuff. So I threw myself into it was kind of Iron Age Europe, particularly kind of focusing on things like Boudicca's revolt and Caesar's Gallic War, that kind of era. And I threw myself into researching Celtic mythologies, primarily as the main kind of influence for the Faithful and the Fallen, but in a world where there's different cultures. So there was some Norse in there. There was some kind of Greco-Roman, and
some Irish mythology.
Yeah, Irish. Well, that's all comes under the
Welsh,
Celtic, really. Irish and Welsh mythology, and that's really, and the fantasy side, the fantasy inspiration specifically was Milton's Paradise Lost.
Yes, yeah.
The war between angels and demons. That's kind of where that came from, and that's where the title came from. For So Deep a Malice, was from Paradise Lost. So those were really kind of the big three things that I threw myself into researching, and I did that for a long time. It took me 8 years, I think, to write Malice. Maybe 7, something like 7 to 8 years to write it. But so that's how I write books now. That was my process, and I do that with every new project now. I just kind of deep dive into the research, and
you buy a sword.
Of course, always a sword
from the culture you're researching,
or an axe. Hey,
it's research. It's important.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. As you can tell from the room behind me. Yeah,
they're all essential.
So that's really how I came to writing, and that's how my process kind of that's how it grew, and that's how I do it now.
Wow, thank you. I find it so wonderful and beautiful and appropriate that family was your inspiration for in the first place for doing this, because family is at the heart of your storytelling in so many ways. I really love hearing that. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't writing with any view to being published. It was a hobby, and I thought I was writing for my family. So my hope was that I would leave something that my children would enjoy, and that I was trying to put in something of the values that I would hope that they grow up and embrace as children and as young men, and as fathers.
Wow. Well, I would say you succeeded marvelously in that, and the rest of us got to benefit from it too. So yeah.
I was going to say, God bless Mama Gwynne
Yeah.
for that little push.
No, it's true.
Well done to her.
None of this would have happened if she hadn't have said, "Try writing a book."
Yeah. Yeah.
Those
Beautiful.
little moments in life are a bit strange, really, how they can just be life changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. Well, Will, we had everybody talk about their relationship to your father's books and as a whole, and then give a little quick assessment of Bloodsworn and Fury. So if you'd like to do that, I would love to hear your answers, and maybe because you didn't hear what Ed said, we can get your side of the story. So
Yeah, thank you. Apologies for dropping out. Maybe I'll repeat some stuff, but let's hope me and Ed have slightly different things to say. We're not quite twins, so we won't say the exact same thing. Obviously, when I think Papa Gwyn, you were just talking about kind of the inception of Malice and when that whole journey began. Obviously, I think I was about 3 days old, so I don't remember that.
No, but we had taken you to see the Two Towers as a baby.
But that means that basically, as long as I've been alive, you've been writing. Exactly that. As long as I've been alive, you've been writing. And at the moment, I am studying English and history at university, and I think I probably wouldn't be if you weren't an author.
yeah.
Because when I was younger, I was more of a mathsy person, that other breed of people. But then when your books are coming out, of course, when Malice came out, I think I was 9, so the nuances of it were probably lost on me. But I just knew that I adored kind of the immersion and the character craft, which are your two most integral parts of your writing, I think, and what you focus most on. And that just started my journey of loving reading, really, as well as you doing a great voice for the trolls when you're reading The Hobbit to me. And so that's led me to, of course, adoring all of your books. And I haven't been paid to say that. That is just me being honest. I adore them all. And yeah, it really has shaped so much of my life.
No cheese involved in this endorsement.
Maybe Ed said that joke before. No cheese for me.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Oh yeah, and of course, leading on to Fury.
Yeah.
Fear of the Gods, just absolutely incredible. I think there'll always be a sentimentality with the Faithful and the Fallen, because just growing up Corban for 10 years, he's basically real, just sat next to me. And of course, the Bloodsworn, obviously, it wasn't as long in the creation, but I just absolutely adore it. I think the finale of Fear of the Gods is just incredible, because it's a very different series to the Faithful and the Fallen. I think it feels a lot more intimate, a bit smaller scale, but then Fear of the Gods manages to take it to those epic heights, but still keeping kind of the core heart of what is just amazing about the Shadow of the Gods and the Hunger of the Gods as well.
Because I remember Will and I reading.
I'm a proud son.
Reading like the first, I think, 20 chapters or so of Shadow when you first sent it, and being like, what the hell? This is insane. I can't believe that we're reading something like this from you. And obviously, you've always been our favorite writer, but seeing Shadow felt like almost kind of like a level up in so many different areas. And also, we're Viking reenactors, so seeing that come to life, how we've kind of imagined things, on the battlefield, as it were, was just amazing. And then I think Fury completely lives up to that promise of that amazing world of the Bloodsworn Saga. Like Sam said, it is a very grim, dark world, but it feels like something that I think you have a quality with your writing as well, Philip, of similar to David Gemmell's characters. They have these heroic characters who are trying to do good, but the world is completely against them. And I feel like the Bloodsworn is similar to that as well. And that's the characters that we love to read as well.
If I can add on to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Sorry, Philip, you go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is that just awesome combination of Papa Gwyn also recommended me a lot of kind of traditional fantasy as I was growing up, but then as I got older, reading a bit more grimdark, a bit more modern fantasy, just love to see kind of the inspiration of both kind of in a boiling pot. And what I'd say are the best parts of it all. Like I love the kind of the.
Sorry, Will, you're cutting out a bit there.
Yeah, we missed the end of
land playing like as a character in itself that you. Oh, sorry. I was just saying I love the hope, which is so central to traditional fantasy. But then Papa Gwynn's also got a lot of terrible things going on. But at least you have that glimmer of happiness, and as you said, the humor as well. And I just think it's an awesome combination.
Oh, that's brilliantly said, Will. I totally agree with you. And the thing that I think Ed was alluding to earlier, and we talked a couple times about the Viking reenactment and all of that, and I think that also lends an authenticity to these books that I find so compelling. Just still non-spoiler, but there is a moment in Fury of the Gods when there's a character who is essentially donning his war gear. And I felt the weight of that Bernie. I felt the scent of leather and oil and everything, and that just almost ritual donning of this war gear. But it just put me there in the moment because it was so authentic and just so real to me, and so just beautifully done. You could just tell, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about here. This is the very informed writer on this particular in this particular realm, which is pretty rare, actually. As much as we fantasy writers do write about battles and swords and all that, it's rare to have somebody with your level of knowledge, John. So that definitely is one of the many appealing factors in your writing, I would say.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you. I mean, I hope that we do Viking reenactment because it's fun. We love it. It's like just like being kids again. But I do hope that it brings a level of detail and depth that for me it's just things that I wouldn't have thought of without doing the reenactment. Like you mentioned, like the weight or getting in, even just getting into a coat of mail.
Dragging it on and having
Yeah.
it stuck.
It's really not easy. My
Yeah.
first attempt, we were at the reenactment festival of the Battle of Hastings, and there's a load of it's like a traders fair there, which is fantastic. There's the people come and sell. They make their coats of mail and they make their swords and helms and shields and reenactors save up and go and buy a lot of kit from these people at these events. And I was trying on a coat of mail, and I literally got stuck. My hands over my head, the mail half on, half off, and I couldn't move. All I could hear was people laughing.
And of course, as a supportive family.
Starting off with my family, but growing louder. The crowd stopped around me just to enjoy the spectacle. Yeah.
I bet you in
Just like
1066 that there was some chap who missed the whole battle because he couldn't get his Bernie on, right?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a Blackadder story in there somewhere.
Well, I have one more question for you, John, before we get into the spoilers. And that is, as an educator, I have the privilege of interacting with a lot of young people. And I also am a father. And when I see younger people, and sorry, Ed and Will, but you're young for me. But when I see young people like these two sons of yours, and Sam, you're also much younger than I am. So when I see young people like Ed and Will, it really restores my faith in humanity because of not just how well read they are, but how they exude this kindness and this love, which is very much, I think, at the heart of your philosophy as a father. So I wanted to ask you, how proud are you of these two boys that we have the wonderful privilege of interacting with here on YouTube?
I'm so proud of them, Philip. They're both amazing. They're kind human beings. That's really the heart of it. They're kind, thoughtful, considerate to other people. Yeah, they're beautiful human beings.
Yeah. Well, you earned that name, Papa Gwyn, I have to say. You did well. You did well with these boys. Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
Well, I'd like to take all the credit, but I think their mother's got a big part to play.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, starting with the whole birth thing, I think she gets most of it for that.
Yeah, I can't steal that one.
So, well, brilliant. Well,
Thanks though, Philip. That's really kind.
Yeah, thank you, Philip.
Oh, well, it really, thank you. Thank you both for being around. But this is our signal for spoilers. So we're going to get into the spoilers for The Fury of the Gods. So if you have not yet read this is your chance to leave us And I would highly recommend that you check out the Bloodsworn Saga if you have not yet, ending with this marvelous conclusion, this triumphant conclusion in the Fury of the Gods. But thank you so much for being here up to this point. And now we are going into spoilers. So I have some themes that I definitely want to talk about, but I want to give my guests here, Sam, an opportunity to talk about what aspect of the book, what character would you like to talk about, Sam? Any particular spoiler moments that you want to get into?
Oh, blimey. There's quite a few, really.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of questions.
Oh, nice.
Well, I watched your review already, Philip.
Oh, good. Okay.
So
Come on, spoil them. Yeah.
I might be stealing from you a little bit. I mean, I was already
By the
going to
way.
talk about these things anyway, but it might
Yep.
appear that I'm stealing. But you mentioned a lot about the othering of people, the tainted, obviously being very much othered and enslaved and seen as just a wrongness on the land. And that was, a really deep theme that I really enjoyed. And obviously, I think my favorite moment of the story is when Elvar frees everybody, frees all of the tainted. It
Yep.
was a huge moment, and it all revolves around Grend, who is one of my favorite characters. A little nugget of information, Grend. It's not actually a name in Icelandic, but it means to be like close by, which is obviously extremely fitting for him because he's always on Elvar's shoulder. But I wanted to know, my question is do you think she would have gone about things differently if she'd known earlier if that Grend was tainted, as it were?
Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. I mean, probably because obviously she's the whole arc of Elvar is moving from this very kind of almost selfishly fixated vision that she has into becoming, a leader and responsible for first her band of the Battle Groom, and then responsible for the realm of Snarkvik, and then responsible for almost the fate of Vigrith in the world. So that was her arc, moving from this person who's just focused on herself and her own goals into becoming someone who's almost had this weight thrown upon her. But I think she does. And that's it's always one of the themes in my books is the power of choice. That people choices can make a difference. And that's been from day one in Malice, but I always want that to be in my books. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that her choices made a difference, and they were altruistic in that it's for the good of everyone. But at the heart of it, I think we're all motivated by kind of more personal reasons. And hers was her love for Gwent, her father figure.
I have to say that that scene was the scene of the book that for me was the most emotional.
Yeah,
That I
same.
was ugly crying when Elvar was first declaring. First, she starts with Ulfrir, and then she moves on and says, "And by the way, now everybody's free," and that already had me going. But then when she talks to Grend and says, "I did it for you," the truth is, I actually did it for you. I was just bawling my eyes out, and that was. If you want to know where you devastate your readers or where you give us the most joy, for me, that is the scene. And I think Sam's question is so insightful. And I love the way that you've done this because it often is the personal connection that allows us to see the injustice with which whole groups of people have been treated. And yes, you could say, well, the tainted, they were dangerous because they have these powers, or they committed these atrocities in the past, or, what have you. But the truth is, there is no justification. There is no valid justification for oppression. of a group of people. And you've done a marvelous job of taking us through this, I think, especially in The Fury of the Gods, and showing us that these are people. They are people first, who may be different from the rest of us in some way, but that does not take away their humanity. And we can see ourselves in them if we're willing to experience that. But that moment when an Elvar changes from that self-seeking, glory-seeking, person to someone who becomes Elvar Chainbreaker, you know, is just so perfect. That is my favorite moment in this entire trilogy, and maybe in all of your writing, honestly. I loved it so much. So well done on that. And the fact that she doesn't live to see a whole lot of her legacy is deeply tragic. And I felt that as well. And you normally you devastate me, John, when you take away a parent, you kill off the parents. I know when I see a parent in one of your books, I'm like, well, he's gone. You know, this time you took away the child.
Don't get attached.
Yeah. This time it was the daughter, and Grend, as a father, had to deal with that loss, and that also was part of this story for me. And there may be a personal reflection in that as well. I don't know how conscious you were of that, if you had decided from the beginning this is the direction you were going, but I just found this such a beautiful story. So
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't have that moment mapped out from the beginning. It kind of, it's one of those organic things. And maybe perhaps it's subconscious because as you know, you sent me some very kind messages in dark moments about the loss of my daughter Harriet. So thank you for that, Philip. I want to say thank you for that, because you were, your messages were just so genuine. And I've had a lot of messages, very from readers, and it's strange, nothing can help, nothing can change what's happened, or heal that hole and that pain. And yet, having messages like I've received from you and many other lovely people, it gives kind of just a moment of comfort, I think, to know that someone kind is thinking about you when you're going through, such tragedy like that. So, it means a lot. So thank you, Philip. And
yeah, no, you give us a lot, and the fact of the matter is, she has a legacy, like Elvar. She has brought beauty into the world, and that legacy lives on. And that's what I found so beautiful about what you did with this character. Yes, you broke my heart, but the fact that she is Elvar Chainbreaker just made this such just a transcendent read for me, really. And so her legacy lives on, and that's beauty. That's beauty. That's life.
Yeah.
Yeah. That really got me. That was big. Other parent-child relationships that we could talk about in terms of spoilers. They're not all happy ones, are they? You have a couple gods who seem to have a little bit of resentment of their papa there. This guy here makes a really epic entrance in here, and then you sweep the rug out from under us when he doesn't really. I mean, he has a big impact on the story in the moment that he's there, but whoa, did you take me by surprise with what you did with Snaka. So yeah, any thoughts on that, guys? Ed or Will or Sam, on Snaka's role here?
I remember when I was first reading it, and they sit down to basically have a meal together, like Rotta, Lickreefer, and Snack, and I thought, this feels a bit strange. You
Family
can also
time,
tell they're a bit
family meal.
terrified of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, no, just a happy family meal in the middle of it. And then the twist, Papa Gwynn's very good at. He likes me and Ed.
Oh, Will, you're breaking up again, son.
He likes to have about
Oh, hopefully he'll come back. But Ed, do you want to, in the meantime, perhaps go ahead, give us your
still
take.
going.
Yeah.
Oh, bless him.
The story.
Yeah, no, that moment where
So,
I was.
oh no,
Are you coming back, Will? Come
maybe
on.
Ed.
Yeah, Ed's going to go ahead, I think. Will.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. As Will was, I'm sure, was going to say, reading that moment, because there's a mention of Rotter when he's talking to Lick Ripper earlier on in the book about Orna. Obviously, Orna was ripped to pieces to feathers, I think Lick Ripper says earlier in the book, and he was mortified that her heart was gone, and he says we could use that power. And then I thought to myself, remember this for later. It's something's going to come back and bite us. And then obviously all of the carnage, all the battle at the Wolfdales happens. You've got stone wolves, you've got rune magic, you've got all of that stuff. You forget about Orna and her heart, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, Snarker's here. It's all just carnage, just a whirlwind really, because Snarker's just destroyed this fleet of Yaramir. Which is a fantastic moment. It's so cinematic. I can see it on the screen. Which is another thing about your writing. It's always cinematic. I always feel like I can see it there in front of me. It's not hard to picture. It's almost tangible. But yeah, and then all of a sudden, them butchering Snarker and eating his heart. It's just going to eat him. It's just absolutely brilliant. What a moment, and totally unexpected. You've got all these characters to worry about, and you think. And Snark even says, "You've brought me back to to basically give everyone a telling off." And I did think he was just going to give all three a bit of a whipping, give Lick Ripper a bit of a whipping, send them back to their rooms, and then that'll be it. No, definitely not. So, fantastic moment, and one of the best of fantasy, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, it was kind of a bittersweet. Like I've been waiting for quite a while. You see the picture on the front of the book. You're like, oh, this is going to be exciting. A big scary snake. And you're waiting. You're like, when's the snake going to come? And then he comes. It's like, yes, epic. And then, oh, he's dead. Oh. So it's both kind of like, wow, that was awesome. But snake, I want more snake. So I was also going to ask about the gods actually. Like, were you tempted to play in this sandbox a bit more? Because I know you mentioned other gods. Were you tempted to bring other ones back to life? Because I personally would love to see the boar.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had all kinds of ideas. And Bursa was another one of the gods that I wanted to. Yeah, there you go. I wanted to do things with him, but for me, I just get a gut feeling where and any more would have been too much. So as much as I would have liked them to be in there, I just felt like adding others would have been just a bit too much. A bit of, just it would have been for the sake of it rather than for the story. And really, the story for me, I try and keep the story as the priority. But I'm not ruling out going back to this world. So if I do, who knows? It's interesting what you're saying about Snarker, because I do a bit of, for my writing, I do a bit of architecture and a bit of gardening, a bit of both really. And Snarker there was a lot of gardening involved in his story in Fury. And I knew going into it, well, from the beginning, I knew that Snarker had to be in it. I like to do kind of an escalation of things, and he was the obvious choice for the escalation for the final book, but I wasn't quite sure why he was going to come back or how going into it and what was going to happen with him. But I try and take inspiration from Norse mythology, and I looked at the dragons, the snakes and dragons and serpents in Norse mythology, and there aren't actually that many. But the one that I looked at was Fafnir. And he was slain by Sigurd, and then Sigurd ate his heart afterwards. So that was the inspiration for Snarker's ending.
Brilliant.
I think it's also
go ahead, Sam.
Sorry, it's a slight benefit of him dying early as well, because he seemed to be quite the arseling.
I don't think things would have gone well for Eddie
No.
if he'd have been around much longer.
Yeah, there's got to be some Jormungand in this Snaka fella as well. The
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I find it interesting too that, as much as the gods are so powerful, you do have an example here of a human character influencing the gods, and that's Elvar, freeing Ulfrir, but also saying, "Yeah, I'm going to free you, but you're going to work for justice now. You're going to," and I'm obviously, the way you've set it up, the most sympathetic toward Ulfrir in the story of all the gods we've met. He seems like the coolest. I like wolves as well, so
Yeah. Yeah.
But he is now compelled, and you have set up the possibility to come back because that another Arsling, Rota, is still running around. So it could be a situation of Ulfrir's influence versus Rota's influence in continuing this world, but I do find it interesting that it's not just one way, that the humans also do have an impact on the gods here, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I wanted to do. Show that it's not just all powerful, omnipresent gods having their way. That again, human choices make a difference, and we can stand up to things that we feel are bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I have to think, speaking of courage and standing up to things and all of that, and another very important parent-child relationship, we have to talk about Orca, of course, in this discussion. One of my now favorite characters in all of fantasy. I want to get everybody's thoughts on Orca, her journey, where she ends up here. Thank goodness you didn't kill her. Thank you.
Again.
That would have been too much, I think.
Yeah, thank you that she and Brekka have been reunited. So it's not all gloom and doom and sad tears. There's some joy in here too. Thoughts on Orca, guys?
I mean, Orca is one of the most kind of iconic figures, I think, in fantasy now, and it's been brilliant since Shadow came out, seeing so much love for her as a character. She's got so many qualities that I think speaks to a lot of different people, and she's got that particular motherly instinct, that kind of passion that really reminds me of Mama Gwynne, who I'm maybe not the, as you said in the interview before, the axe wielding kind, but there's like a fierce, love for her children, and seeing that kind of embodied, that kind of feminine power embodied through Orca is brilliant to read. I mean, I always thought of her as John Wick in Shadow, and then she just slowly transforms by the end. And I love how she has, a happy ending, which there aren't too many happy endings in your books, but seeing her at the end with the remainder of the Bloodsworn, and she's at the house, at the home where Thorkel was killed, but she's willing to stay there and carve that as her home, because her home are the people there, as well as that place, and it's a special place. And there's a particular moment where Orca is with Brekka and they meet Glornir on the ship battle, and Brekka meets Glornir for the first time, and that to me was probably one of the most emotional bits of the book, where Glornir is crying and Brekka wipes his tear away, and he's like, "It's great to meet you, Uncle." And he's like, "Uncle, that sounds good." And that was just a really powerful moment. And you see Brekka has that kind of that childhood innocence, which is still coming through, even all that he's been through. He's been kidnapped, he's been, almost tortured pretty much. He's been, it feels like he's been ripped from his family, and he's still got that spark that children do. And I think you captured that really beautifully. But seeing Orca as well with Glornir is incredibly powerful. And I'm still asking for a prequel with Orca becoming the skullsplitter. I'd love to see that.
Yes, I'd read that. Let's get Will's thoughts while his internet is working, and then we'll get to Sam.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Which one of the gods is in charge of Wi-Fi, Dada? Because I need them to be behind me right now.
Definitely Rota.
That's Rota. Unfortunately,
it has to be Rota.
For the greater good. Yeah. For the greater good, I'll have to go to him for this. But Orca, she's just an absolute force of nature. And something I really love is, because, as Ed said, how popular she's become in the fantasy genre. I think that most authors would have I don't know, made her the main force of change because of how popular she is. But you kind of believed in your own writing and you went for Elvar for that role because it fit perfectly.
Mm.
And I kind of love that Orca doesn't become, in most fantasy books, will become the leader and lead this great force against the enemy, because she is kind of the most recognizable character from the trilogy. And in Shadow of the Gods, she's by far the main focus. I love how her story still remains intimate because it is about her only focus is looking after Brekka and the others that she loves and revenge. She does not want to be caught up in being a leader again. And I love that she stays true to that. And there's a lot of satisfaction in the revenge here. But also, I love that you show the character growth of characters older and younger. And you see that with Orca, that she's distanced herself from the Bloodsworn and she kind of regrets that. She knows she did it to keep Brekka safe, but now she wants to remain with them because she realizes they're family. And again, it's just keeping family at the heart of the story, isn't it? So emotional, so moving. And Orca is someone you'd want on your side, but I think I'd be a bit scared to have a chat with her.
You see what I mean about loving to hear these guys talk about books? Yeah. Brilliant. And how about you, Sam? What are your thoughts on Orca?
Oh, my, many. But firstly, do you guys know what Orca means? No? So it's not a name, it's not an Icelandic name, but it is a word and it means energy,
Mm.
which is kind of fitting. She's quite
Fitting, yeah.
energetic at times. Um, but no, I obviously loved Orca. She was brilliant. I love that she's an older character as well. I don't think there are enough older heroic characters in fantasy books. She's so often following the teenager coming into their powers or whatever. So I find it really nice to see, I don't know, would you call her middle age? She's at least like graying at least. And again, strong female characters. I know that this is a thing that people talk about. There's not enough just like pure badass, scary women in books. So I find that fairly refreshing. And I think my wife would really like this book because she's always complaining about lack of female representation. So that was brilliant. But she kind of, we talk about the John Gwynne style of the family and the importance of family. She's obviously a key character within this series, representing that. Not the only one, obviously, but like the one that we focus on the most. So this is where the John Gwynne shines through. It's through Orca. So you get all of the feels from her, and it's brilliant. And I also loved that she let Brekka finish off Drekker. It's like, no, I want to do this, but you deserve to get some stabby action on this guy as well. I thought that was brilliant.
It's
Yeah,
a really
she's
satisfying moment.
exactly, yeah. So she's a force of nature, and she was brilliant.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks. Yeah, I'm really blown away by how people have taken to Orca. It's lovely to see. And when you're writing a book, you just have no idea, how characters are really going to go down with the readers. But so it's fun. I mean, there were people turning up at the signings I did a couple of weeks ago with skullsplitter sweatshirts on. Which I was like, oh wow, people have really just taken to Orca, which and that's marvelous. I mean, and Orca started off, as a trope when I was working the story out, and I love tropes. I don't think they're a dirty word. I like tropes. But I like to try and freshen them up or do a twist on them. Like in the Faithful and Fallen, one of the main tropes was the prophecy and the chosen one kind of prophecy. I tried to put my own spin on that, and the same with Orca. She started off as I knew I wanted that classic retired veteran of war. Really inspired by people like William Money. Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven. That was kind of the first spark of the inspiration for Orca, and then obviously just kind of turned it around and made her a female. I thought that equality is always something that's on my mind that I want to factor into my writing, and I thought it was a really good fit with the Viking world because you've got shield maidens and the the grave at Burka with the historians and archaeologists thought was a high-ranking elite warrior. Who they presumed he was a male, but actually now they've discovered that this grave, the skeleton in there, is a female, buried with the highest level of kind of military accoutrements. So I just thought that it was a good fit for a female veteran to just feel authentic in this world.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where Orca started.
And I love her because she has this history with Svik. And there's a few stories through the trilogy of where Svik, kind of joined the Bloodsworn, and he has a few different versions, but the real version is that, he was that Orca found him, didn't she?
Yeah.
And she took him in, and he saw her as kind of that mother figure that he didn't have. And that was a really powerful moment as well, seeing, I think, her in with Svik and her having Brekka kind of helped her re-establish herself as one of the Bloodsworn, that she was re-becoming one of them, and that felt like the gateway, through Svik. So
absolutely. And that he at point blank asked her, "Why did you leave us?" And that's the most serious you see him in the entire trilogy. And you're absolutely right, Ed. That was the pivotal moment for her being re-embraced by the family, which leads to the ending, really, where they're going to live at her homestead. So beautiful stuff. Yeah.
Actually, that last scene. So some scenes I have no idea about, and they grow organically. But that last scene, I right from the beginning, I saw that in my head as Orca and Brekka standing at Thorkild's grave as the last chapter.
Wow. Huh.
So yeah, obviously it grew a little bit and turned into the survivors of the Bloodsworn being there too. But I always knew that was where I was heading with her.
Full circle right there. Yeah, that's brilliant. Another immensely satisfying character journey in here for me was Varg's. And so let's talk about him beginning as a slave in this trilogy and ending where he ends up with a family. Of course, he has the grief of his sister, but he also has had some vengeance for that. You succeeded once again in getting me to actually hate certain characters, and one of them was definitely Weasel Guy. But Varg's journey just immensely satisfying. He's with family. He's got Rukia, if that's how you say her name. And I think that they're going to be a wonderful couple. It's a lot of fun to watch their interactions and her, his almost innocence, and her just kind of putting him in his place, and the whole no sense tag that he has earned. So guys, thoughts on Varg? Who wants to go first on this one? Let's get you, Will.
I think the biggest moment for me with Varg was the Akal that happened with he was seeing Freya and Brack Trollsbane, and what a cruel idea to see her last moments through her eyes. And I just think you wrote it perfectly, and it felt very poignant. And watching him, lose a sister felt particularly impactful, because of clearly what we've been through the last few years. But yeah, that was an incredible scene, and that was, I think, almost the start of the tears. And I probably didn't stop crying through most of the book there, but yeah, that was incredibly powerful. And then you have this undying hatred for Brack Trollsbane.
Yeah, who also does an Einar, and another reason not to like him, really.
Yeah.
One of the most likable characters in the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
There have to be consequences when there are these battles raging, and somebody has to go. I get it, but ouch. Yeah. I loved him and his relationship with he was an adopted father to all those kids, and that was just so wonderful and joyful. But
that was actually one.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one where I actually remember asking Papa Gwyn, really? Do you have to do this to Einar? I just don't think I can take it. All the others, you know what? There's some very, like, Elvar, that hit me really hard, but I understood, for the story, it needs to be done. But I was like, please, just give me Einar. As you can tell, the answer was no. So son privileges only go so far.
Yeah.
At least you had Varg, though, right, Will?
Yes, I really have adored Varg from the beginning. I think, of course, Orca, Shadow of the Gods, shone. But I think Varg wasn't too far behind in my opinion. I just really just clicked with his story. And I find it really interesting, kind of Papa Gwynn's exploration of the human condition, thinking about if he had had that event, the Akal, in the Shadow of the Gods, would he have remained with the Bloodsworn? And so circumstance changes so much in that he has this family, and that's a comfort to him and a drive. And it just shows that I think it's probably a period of maybe a year. Over that year, how much he changes, it feels so believable.
Yeah.
And it's another kind of big what if that happened sooner. And his relationship with Rukia and Svik as well, because Varg's a little bit older. I think he's about 30, but still being taught they're his mentors, even though they're close in age. And I love that kind of balance between kind of mentorship and friendship, which he still feels so alien to. And there's moments where he just feels like it can't be real. And I love that. I think in many books in any genre, authors after kind of one book kind of leave that aspect behind, not thinking of how people might still be affected by things that happened a little while ago. I think authors can sometimes move beyond that change quite quickly. And I love in The Fury of the Gods how that's still very much present. And Varg is just a character I think feels so real. And again, one of those that I love that isn't pushed into the role of leadership and that classic fantasy idea of to be heroic, you need to lead a group of people and save a group of them as well. Varg falls into far more realistic in the sense of the Bloodsworn, but he's a hero in his own right as well.
Beautifully said. Yeah. Sam, thoughts on Varg? We all know what
Uh,
Varg means.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
So I think he was probably my favorite POV character. It's a hard decision, but probably he was my favorite. And I think part of it is because I was talking about Orca being the family John Gwynneism. Varg is the found family John Gwynneism. This guy's, obviously had a really tough life, but he finally finds people who love him and who he loves, and it's just so heartwarming and beautiful. And I feel like he's almost like a little puppy. Which is, well, he's a wolf puppy, but it's interesting to say this about someone who's so vicious, but he's just adorable, and I just want to be his friend. He's such a nice, innocent guy, and you learn a lot about the world through him as well, because he doesn't know much about the world, so he's a really fun character to follow for that. And one of my favorite moments in Fury was when he hopped off to the bushes with Rukia. Go on, son! Finally, we've all been waiting for it. But one question I wanted to ask about Varg actually was like, I feel like he was sworn into the Bloodsworn quite late. I was wondering, like, do all of the Bloodsworn have to go through so much, so many horrendous battles to be sworn into the Bloodsworn? Because I felt like it was like he's put in a shift.
Yeah, yeah,
He's earned it.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I think in normal blood-sworn circumstances, he would have been sworn in after the battle at Rotter's mine.
Mm.
But I think actually Glornius mentions that at the time, but he says, "But we're busy because we have to get Vol
Right.
back." So it's kind of put on the shelf until they get
Stuff
Vol
to
back.
do, people
Yeah.
to kill. We'll
Yeah.
do it later.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
was a beautiful moment, I thought, as well.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
And I
the
love-
balance between, of course, in Fury of the Gods, there's so many action sequences and kind of blood pumping, heart thumping moments in that way. But I love how that's kind of counteracted as well by the slower moments, the ones that have been built up throughout the trilogy. They haven't been rushed. It's just been waiting for it and waiting. So along with the surprises, you've got these moments of such big payoff that you've been wanting for, I don't know how, all three about 1,000 pages altogether. You've been rooting for it the whole time. So moments like him being sworn into the Bloodsworn, it's just like there's not many moments in books that make me want to physically kind of punch my fist up in the air, but that was one of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, John.
Sorry, one of my kind of little writing mantras, and I stole this from Peter Jackson, being Lord of the Rings geek and a mega fan. we didn't just watch the films; we watched the appendices as well, the extended editions and the appendices.
Oh yeah.
On loop, really. And I remember when he was.
Wait, people don't watch the extended editions.
Some strange people out there don't.
They're not people.
Yeah, but we were
Don't believe it.
watching the extended edition and Peter Jackson's breakdown of the Battle of Helm's Deep, and he said that he specifically went from an epic shot to an intimate shot all the way through the battle. So it would be like a big wide angled epic shot of the scene, and then he would focus in on one of the characters and make it intimate, then go back to wide, then back into another of the main characters. And it's really interesting to rewatch that and see how he does that. And I think it makes you feel more invested all the way through. You're kind of awed by the scale of it, and then your heart's in thumping, that your character is going to end up hurt in some way. And so, I've tried and apply that to writing in general. I have my mantra is epic and intimate. So I try. I love epic scale and scenarios, and I try to come up with that. But I'll also try to keep it intimate with those intimate moments, because for me, and again, this is just my way. It's not the way, but my way is that for me personally, if I don't care about the characters, then the epic scenes don't affect me in the same way. So I hope that what I attempt to do is focus on the characters so that we care about them before they hit these epic scenes. So and then hopefully you feel more invested and involved in what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say you have been brilliantly successful in that. Another character, I want to get in two more before I let you all go, but I feel like they're very important as well. One being Bjor. And there are moments when I really can't stand Bjor, and there are moments when I really sympathize with him. And that's really well done. I do feel that this trilogy as a whole has given me a sense of your most nuanced characters. And Bjor in particular is one where I feel like he has a valid argument here in terms of how tainted people have been treated, and his desire for freedom is valid. And yet there have been acts of betrayal, and his whole relationship with Elvar is so fraught and complex, and there's genuine affection and attachment in there, as well as resentment. Just it's so well done. And then there's that moment when he realizes that Elvar was telling him the truth, that she had freed the tainted, and his whole world drops from underneath him, and you feel that his loss of faith in what he was doing, and it's really well done. And his end as well, as it comes very abruptly. I was thinking, oh, maybe a redemption arc here, and then oh, nope. Which I actually liked. I liked the way you handled that. And it seemed like a kind of reap what you sow moment as well in there. So because you did have Gunnar, a lot of vengeance happening in here, which is definitely a big part of Norse, Viking age ethics, really. I mean, you're morally obligated to obtain vengeance for your loved ones. That's one of the big differences between our worldview and theirs. But you really you lean into it here beautifully. So thoughts on Bjor, guys? Who wants to go first? Will?
Bjor's another one of those characters that I've had a few chats with Papa Gwyn. We've talked about kind of big differences between the Faith and the Fallen and the Bloodsworn. And Papa Gwyn said there's been a few moments in particular that he feels if they were in the Faith and the Fallen, they would have panned out differently. I think a key one is Elvar's duel in Hunger of the Gods. She wouldn't have killed her opponent. I think it's Hild. She would have let her live in kind of the classic Faith and the Fallen. Your characters are heroes, but she has no such qualms. She's very angry, and she has no qualm killing her off to become the leader. And that's kind of a big difference between the Faith and the Fallen and the Bloodsworn. And I feel that ending with Bjor is another such moment that whilst there is hope in the Bloodsworn, it is very grim. And you see that of Bjor just as he's ready to have his redemption, to do some good, it's too late. and it really like it's really snappy. I was wondering, oh, where's his role going to go from here? Oh wait, it's over. And I've just loved that dynamic, knowing in Hunger and Fury the build up that there was going to be this confrontation between him and Elvar, because most of the characters on Luke Rufus' side, they evoke hatred, and you cannot wait for them to meet their end. But with Bior, I really liked Bior. Of course, he's done some bad things, but you understand why he's done it. He's not like Guthvar, who he really needs a bad ending. And I just love that conflict where you don't just want one side destroyed. It's something that I think many of the modern great fantasy series do really well, that you're invested in both sides. And I think Bior is how that's kind of achieved.
Yeah, there are complexities on both sides, and you haven't tried to make Licriffa or Rotta sympathetic. They're like the focal points, the figureheads of that side of the conflict, but you've made it that the people underneath them have this hope, which obviously hope is a big part of your books, but you've got it on the bad side, typically what we would see. And then you've got Elvar, which also, at first she is the person who is enslaving people, and she's a big part of that. She's got a whole guard of berserkers. So you've got complexities on both sides. And I think Bior's ending is brilliant. I mean, it's very saga-ish, isn't it? There's always someone ready with an axe to kill you. Just when you've done something of noteworthy, there's always someone about to backstab you. So no, I think it's a particularly good moment. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Sam?
Well, first question, as of always, do you know what Bior means? Do you?
No, I
Do you know
don't.
what Bior means?
I can't remember,
It means two things. One is beaver. Another one is beer. So his name is Beer, which is
Beaver
quite
beer.
entertaining. The beer, yeah. So,
I wouldn't say that, do I?
but Bjor is he was an interesting one for me. I really enjoyed his journey, and the nuances of his struggle, basically his inner struggle of what is right, because you could constantly see him questioning what he's doing, whether he's doing the right thing. And I think it was a really good way of showing how kind of people can be swayed by propaganda, from Licriffa. He saw a lot of really awful things happening on her word, but he still believed that what she was doing was right. It was for the greater good, as it were. So I thought that was a really interesting look at the story through his eyes of, terrible things are happening, but it's all for a greater good, and him justifying the nasty things, even when people like Bjorn are telling him, I'm a slave. He can completely ignore it. So I thought it was a really interesting perspective.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I love those conversations of Bjorn, because it's like kind of the innocence of a child. Sometimes just it has the right answer because they're saying it simply. And exactly as you said, that's cutting through the propaganda. And it's kind of an enlightening moment for Bjorn, but he's not quite ready to face the realizations of that.
But he did the right thing in the end. So
Yeah.
And then he died.
Didn't do him too much personal good.
No, but he kind of deserved it. So
yeah, I'm not sure if there's a lesson in that, Papa Gwyn.
Well, I think the idea behind that was that hatred is such a negative force, and like you said, they were doing the right thing but in the wrong way, and it was hatred that was twisting how they were going about, and really it was more about vengeance than justice.
Yeah.
For most of the people on Licriffa's side, because they had been wronged, terribly wronged. But and so that I kind of used Bior to try and focus on that whole theme. And Will, you're right. We have had this conversation. If this was the Banished Lands and the Faithful and the Fallen, his arc probably would have ended differently. In many ways, he kind of felt there is this kind of a similarity to Camlin in the Faithful and the Fallen. He's a brigand on the bad side to start off with, has his moment, and chooses to do the right thing. And Camlin was in the glade, and he stood up to protect Cohen and Idana when really he probably thought he had no chance of surviving that moment. So he made his choice and came through it. Whereas for Bjor, he had a similar kind of moment in Hunger of the Gods with the Seether Witch that escaped with Bjorn, and he helped them escape. But then they were captured and brought back, and he kind of had that pivotal moment there where he had a choice to make, and he killed her, to survive. And so I think from that moment on, I knew that he wasn't going to come out like Camlin. He was, and because it's a Norse, this is it, the Bloodsworn is a darker tale than the Faithful and the Fallen, still with themes of hope, but it is grittier and darker. And I wanted to really tie into those kind of the sagas, the themes of the sagas, and have that feel. So that's why he, even when he did kind of redeem himself at the end and return Bjorn and turn his back on the war and was about to leave and look after the other tainted children, that he met a very quick and cruel end.
Yeah. Wow.
It just a lot of writing is on gut feeling at the time, and that's just my gut felt that was the right end for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of characters with pivotal moments, we would be remiss if we did not discuss Gudmund. Or sorry, was it Gunnar?
Guthvar.
No, Guthvar. Sorry, I had to look at that.
Whatever.
I think because Litwith call him Guthlaf. There's so many.
Yeah,
He's
sorts,
just thinking all these things to say to him.
Yes, hello. Okay.
Great.
Well, I hope he's not based on anyone that Papa Gwyn knows. At least he's not told us.
Oh no. Not going to tell us that.
So you think. He was a lot of fun to write. I really enjoyed writing Guthvar.
I like to think of him with your kind of like Abercrombieism in here.
Yeah. It's Guthvar Dan Luther, isn't it?
He's Jezel, but nastier.
Yeah.
No redemption.
Yeah, there was definitely kind of a Joe Abercrombie inspiration for him. Yeah.
Now, is he can't be the only one, but I feel like we get the most internal thoughts from him. And I thought you did a brilliant job with exactly what Ed and Will were talking about here, which is there's the external stuff going on, and then there's him with his kind of snarky and internal comment, but it's also incredible lack of self-awareness. One of the moments that made me laugh out loud in the book was where the chapter that starts with him saying, "Am I a coward?" Just,
Yes.
complete lack of self-awareness there, which is what makes him, the lack of empathy really is what makes him kind of villainous, really, I think.
Yeah, I love that kind of am I a coward aspect. And later on when Lif is beating him in a fight and he's like, no, I run from dragons and monsters. I don't run from fishermen. And then he runs.
He's like, great, I need to beat him. he's almost annoyed at it.
I really love that. Of course, he provides a lot of humor, and he's kind of a lens showing kind of what's going on in the bad camp. But I love that he also shows there is a choice. Like Bjorn makes a choice to redeem himself at the end. On Elvar's side, she makes a big choice to become the chain breaker, and Guthvar has the choice to do some good things, and he becomes self-serving, and it doesn't serve him very well in the end. But I love the aspect that each of these characters, even if they don't really have a huge kind of sphere of importance to characters above them, they still have a big role to play.
We got the gist of that. And right when Will's dropping these gems with the internet.
Oh, sorry, Mark, cut out there.
Repeat that last part, Will, maybe for
and
us.
Then I go. I love how each of the characters, all of them have agency within their own sphere, even if it's not world changing. And Guthvar has that as well. And I love how he has the ability to actually have quite a big positive change, but he does not take it. And he still remains the snot nose.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
really well said. Thank you for repeating that. Ed or Sam, thoughts on everyone's favorite character to love or laugh at in the series?
I mean, he
If-
reminds me of Rafe, but just even more despicable.
Yeah.
I think Rafe walked so Guthvar could run, and I do love. I love a character who's saying something completely different in their head, and then out loud they're saying the total opposite. It reminds me of Gorst, who's my favorite Abercrombie character as well. I mean, his is for a different reason. He doesn't want to speak out loud because of his effeminate voice, and that really upsets him. But I think, yeah, I think Guthvar's handled brilliantly, and his ending is particularly satisfying, and it wraps up brilliantly. That it's Lif dealing the final blow to him after all that you saw, because that moment in Shadow is quite a shocking moment where it's the first Holmganger. And it's it's quite official, and then you see the tainted coming into play. But seeing Guthvar as a Drenga, having that, seeing his cowardice as well, immediately he's like how you're saying that you go intimate and epic, and then you have like an escalation. Guthvar's kind of like the first of many bad people to be happening in a story, and then it escalates. They all get worse and worse, but he's still the thorn in everyone's side.
Oh, and if I can just build off that, Guthvar is, I think, a classic example of Papa Gwynn's gardening, because you did not plan for him to be a perspective later on, and he's become so integral to the story. And going on a little bit of a tangent, me and Ed a few years ago, wanting to write, we thought Papa Gwynn's our father, so it should be easy. He's going to have all the secrets for us. And we said, how do you create these amazing stories where it ties together? And he said, it just happens. The ideas just come. So that wasn't the most use for us, but it's a big insight into how his stories come together.
Sam, do you have thoughts on Guthvar?
If he was tainted, his god would be the weasel, surely, because he is a sniveling little weasel. But
I hear some hatred there.
Well, I mean, obviously, but in a way, I kind of actually respect him a little bit. I respect his cowardice, because like everyone else in these stories is so brave and so strong, and it's like that isn't what everyone would be like in this world. Some people are going to be frightened and run for their lives. So I kind of respect that he's just like, yes, I want to live. I don't want to go fight a dragon. I don't want to go and fight Orca because I'm going to die. So fair enough, like that's fine. But he always manages to get stuff done as well through his weaselly nature. So I respect him for that.
That's well said. And he does have that dialogue with his aunt about courage, which I actually thought you were saying some profound things in that moment about courage. You can't have courage if you don't know fear, right? And that is a theme that you deal with very well as well, John, is the idea of courage. So I thought it was interesting that you put that in that moment, that dialogue between Guthvar and his aunt on the theme of courage.
Yeah, thanks. He was a lot of fun to write, Guthvar. And Will's right. He was, I had no, he wasn't a thought as a POV character when I was writing Shadow. And neither was Bior really. I wanted in Shadow, I just wanted to write a tighter story. So I wanted to keep the POVs down. So I wrote Shadow, and usually when I write, I have kind of a series of events that help me keep moving forward. And that's so that's for I had key events for all three books in my head before I start writing book one. Not all of them, but kind of most of the big events I have in my mind that I point the characters towards. And I got to the end of Shadow and I thought, well, okay, I have these events in book two, and these POVs can't see these events. They won't. They'll be doing something else. So I thought, okay, well, I need at least one character, possibly two, to be able to see these events from. And then also, one of the things that I really like to do when I'm writing is try and see a conflict from both sides. And I thought, well, actually, the three POVs I've got at the moment, they're all, even though they've got different stories, they're all seeing one side of this conflict. They're not seeing it from the other side. So that's kind of what helped me come up with using Guvar and Bior as the eyes, the POVs for book 2 and book 3. But there is a lot of gardening in their stories, really. You know, working out what did they have, what could they do that would keep them interesting, moving towards the events that I wanted them to show off. You know, so yeah, you know, but he was so much fun to write, Guthvar. From, I think his first chapter was when he pushes the injured Drenga overboard.
That's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I felt from that chapter, you know, I was just going to have fun with this guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, thank you. I'm glad you noticed that moment that he had with his aunt Sigrun. You know, when they were talking about battle and courage, and you know, and he did genuinely love his aunt. You know,
Yep.
I don't want to write characters that just feel, you know, two-dimensional. You know, there's more to him than just the sniveling coward.
Yeah.
But then he had his choice, you know, and he chose to leave her behind when she was injured.
That hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, that's kind of and so things might have panned out differently if he'd chosen to stay and, you know, carry on helping her.
Yeah.
I love how that's like the worst thing he does, really. Like reading it, there's so many terrible things he does, but because you understand his motivations. But at that point, that is just, there is no redemption at this point. And maybe you could have had a miracle turnaround where he does something good to save her, and you might like him a bit more. But no, he is just the worst, and he betrays everything he holds dear.
Yeah.
So true. Well, I know I don't want to take too much of your time. We've already gone further than I anticipated, but this has been such a delightful conversation. I thank all 4 of you for joining me for this, and I really want to congratulate you, John, on this marvelous achievement, this triumph. This is just wonderful, and you're a New York Times bestselling author here, aren't you? So
Yeah.
congratulations. This is
Thank you.
fantastic. Well earned.
Thank
Well
you.
earned.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you guys, and thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Philip, and to talk to you for the first time, Sam. It's lovely.
Yeah, this is
to
my
meet you.
first ever discussion video, so what a way
Okay.
to start. I know it's been an absolute pleasure.
Start
So
with
to
a bang.
that, I'm gonna have, it's Saturday night. I'm gonna have a Viking beer. So skål. Tack för
Oh.
mig.
You are a fabulous man. Welcome to the Bloodsworn.
It's a beaver beer.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Go and check out the Brothers Gwynne if you don't know about it already. I suspect you probably do if you're watching this, but if you don't, Brothers Gwynne, I'll have a link to that, and also Will's own channel, which we won't talk about because Ed is here, and Sam's channel, Sam Not So Wise. Check it out as well. It's a very young channel, so go and give him some love, everybody. And thank you so much for watching. And everybody, we will see you in the next one. And until next time.
Truth and courage.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.